Seasickness. 50% of us reckon we don't get it.
Yeah, but that's not true because 90% of us do get it.
They do. We've got 5 ways to combat seasickness. In this week's episode, the one that we published on the Thursday just gone, you'll notice that we hit that swell and we were hitting about sort of 3 meters. Now, there wasn't actually much footage in that because we were doing 2 things. The first thing is that we were trying to handle the boat. And the second thing is that we were feeling a little bit peaky and weren't really up for videoing the experience.
Yeah, that combination of motion, the smell of the diesel and the anxiety, 3 classic reasons why we all get seasick.
Now, we are lucky because we always say we don't really get seasick, do we?
No.
But we do occasionally feel a little bit queasy, and I think this is the case with most people on boats, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we've come up with 5 ways to kind of combat the seasickness, and we've put them into sort of groups.
The pharmaceutical way, the homemade way, the alternative way, the practical way, and the magical way.
So, Dr. Liz, what is seasickness?
Well, it's the same as any kind of motion sickness. You can chuck up in a car,
Barf on a bus?
chunder on a train,
Puke on a plane?
you can pray to the porcelain god as you hurtle down an amusement track.
So it's basically motion sickness, which is better known as kinetosis, is that right?
That's right, kinetosis.
And Dr. Liz, what causes seasickness?
Well, according to my extensive research, we have a very simple problem. We have our eyes looking at something stationary. So you might be reading a book, looking at a chart plotter, looking at the wall of the heads as you're chundering. You could be looking at your phone, any of those things. So basically your eyes are looking in one direction, but at the same time, your inner ear, which controls your balance, is telling your brain that you're moving around. And so your brain is getting conflicting messages. And that sends out a whole rash of weird hormones that thrash around your brain and your body. And it ends up with being nauseous, having headaches, being dizzy, and generally having that awful seasick feeling.
So why do some people get seasick and not others? Well, those others are probably lying because statistically 90% of us will get some kind of motion sickness at some point in their lives. So those 50% of people are lying. Historically, we've always said that we don't get seasick.
Yes.
But the fact is there are occasions, like the other week when we were going into that swell, where you just don't feel quite right. And anyone can get it. I mean, hardened fishermen that hit the North Sea get it, experienced skippers, racers, and most famously,
Admiral Nelson. From the Facebook group Women Who Sail, I haven't tried it yet, but I recently read that wearing an eye patch over one eye helps because without depth perception, your mind stops trying to keep things in focus. An old pirate cure?
Maybe. Okay, so what if I don't have an eye patch? Is there any good news?
Yeah, there is. The first fact is that it won't kill you. And the second is that it will go away. And thirdly, we've got a few ideas of how to tackle the problem.
Beginning with the pharmaceutical way.
Yeah, it's the most obvious one. I think most people have heard of taking Dramamine or Studiron or any of those. You can buy them over the counter. They're antiemetics. They basically stop you from vomiting. But of course they are antihistamines.
Yes, so you end up getting quite drowsy on them.
Yeah.
And it's also recommended that you should take them before you start feeling sick. So
Yes.
12 hours or longer beforehand, which kind of begs the question, well, how do you know if you're going to get seasick?
I guess if you already know that you suffer from it, you've already got this under control. It's not something we've ever done.
No, we've never taken these, but if anyone has, then please let us know how you find them in the comments below.
Yeah, and remember they also come in a patch form now.
Yes, I'd love to know if those work.
Yeah, I know. Let us know.
Next up, the homemade way.
Yeah, this is something that we do use. The first thing that we do use I use regularly, is ginger. We have ginger in a lot of our food anyway.
Yeah.
And I buy huge amounts of ginger because here in Southeast Asia, it's available everywhere and it's brilliant and it's huge and it keeps for ages. So I make tea with it. If you can get your hands on fresh ginger, you get about that much, slice it up and just pour boiling water on it, and you can leave it in a great big, I use a big flask, litre flask, just have it there all day long and just sup that ginger. It is known that ginger does help settle the stomach.
Well, it's also known among yachties, so,
Yeah.
you know, ginger nut biscuits, they're a
Yes.
classic, you know, along with your Spam.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got ginger nut biscuits, certainly in the UK when I was saying people had ginger nut biscuits. But I think the jury's out, isn't it, on whether these ginger additives actually work, because we know that ginger definitely has some kind of medicinal benefit. But the stem ginger sweets, I think, I'm not sure if they've actually decided whether they really work.
Yeah, well,
or
I'll
not.
tell you what I read, and that was that the sweetness, the sugar in it is not good for you. So you want to reduce the amount of sugar, because that kind of does things in your stomach to help vomiting. So yeah, but ginger's great. I was also told by the women who sail that peppermint oil and lavender oil can work. Now, peppermint oil is quite well known as a good way for keeping your stomach nice and settled. It's quite well known. So I guess you can use mints, not too sweet.
Not sure about lavender though.
No.
It's a bit overpowering, isn't it?
Yeah, and someone else had said, yeah, lavender's no good for me because it's just too strong. And we'll come on to odours in a minute, because odours really can affect you. But you can take a bit of peppermint oil and just rub it on your skin, and apparently that might help.
Might help.
Third way, the alternative way. Yeah. Okay, so some people, if you believe in homeopathy, if that's your thing, there are definite homeopathic remedies. I haven't tried them. So there's that. There is also acupuncture. That doesn't mean walking around the boat with needles sticking out of you.
It could be a bit dangerous.
No, it could walk even. No, there's something called an acupressure wristband, which people may have heard of, and it has a point on the wristband which goes into a certain point on your wrist, which is supposed to help you settle your stomach. Alternative? Got any others?
Yeah, there's another really good alternative, and that's a bit of... yes, someone on Facebook suggested smoking weed. I can't remember if I've ever sailed stoned. I think I'd just end up getting paranoid all the time that the boat was sinking.
I think I'd be sick. I think it'd make me sick. I guess it depends what your tolerance to weed is.
I suppose it depends how you take it as well. You could put it in little hash brownies.
Yeah, we're not recommending this, folks. It's just
I don't know. Could be worth trying.
Elsewhere on Facebook, someone suggested this to me. She said that she taps her face because her seasickness is rooted in anxiety. It's when she's scared. That's when she starts to get really sick. And this, tapping your face, is supposed to relieve anxiety.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I know, I'm going to try it.
There was one last quote I had to read out from the Women Who Sail Facebook
brilliant.
group, which is really good. I used to always be seasick with rolling waves, except for once, when the other person on board was sick. It was as if someone had to be able to get the work done, and the brain decided unconsciously it was not the time to be sick. I think that is a really good solution. Make sure someone else is sick first. There was a time when I went down the west coast in the southwest monsoon with a friend.
Yeah, west coast of Thailand.
And they got quite sick. They weren't chundering, but they basically became incapacitated. And I had to take over.
Right.
So immediately you're kind of occupied and you can't afford to be sick because there was only two of us.
So he couldn't do anything.
He couldn't do anything.
It was his boat.
It was his boat, but I had to do everything. And well, I mean, I didn't feel sick at the time anyway, but I didn't have time to be sick. So yeah, I think that one's a really good idea. Make sure someone else is sick first.
And he was being sick because you had a problem with the engine and you were rolling, and that's going to bring us on to number 4, the practical way.
Lots of practical ideas here, some of which you probably know already. And I think the first most obvious one, isn't it, is looking at the horizon.
Yeah, and do you know why?
I guess it's because of the inner ear issue you were talking about earlier, and the fact that the inner ear is miscommunicating what it is seeing.
Yes.
So you're effectively reducing that visual motion, I guess, by looking at the horizon. If you look at waves close up, and especially I noticed if you look at waves through binoculars, that's a real no-no.
Terrible.
you know, obviously it's more accentuated.
Yeah, so you face forward,
Yes,
because
that's
your
the other
body
thing.
is telling you that.
Keep looking forward. Sitting sideways
Yeah,
is more likely to bring it on.
Yeah, and you're facing the waves, and any kind of other movement is even more confusing to your brain. So it's like if you're in a car and you get car sick, don't look at the other cars, look at where you're going. Look at that far point. Having that to look at just concentrates the brain. It brings the same messages as the movement of the boat, because you're moving and the horizon's there. So yeah, that's really important. And of course, when you're doing that, you're up on deck.
Yeah, it's funny we're talking about this right now, because the boat's just gone past and the boat's moving. I don't know if that got picked up on the camera, but I feel a bit sick. Talking of looking at things, one thing you should absolutely avoid is electronic devices, Kindles, mobile phones, even reading. I'm sure that some of you, when you've been in a car and you've tried to, I don't know, read a map, it can bring on that sicky feeling.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I have noticed. Sometimes I'm trying to read something on my phone in rough weather.
Yes.
And that's the time actually when I most feel a bit like, ooh.
I get headachy, so
Yeah.
I know, right, stop that now. Recently, and so both of us have started just listening to things on the phone, so listening to a podcast or something, and so you're keeping looking out, so that's good. And you're upstairs, you've got the wind on your face, which is also good. Don't go down below.
Just talking of podcasts,
Yeah.
we had this discussion the other week, didn't we? How, well, I was finding that I found happy, uplifting podcasts were better than listening to a spooky, intense audiobook.
Or anything about the news. Yeah.
Something that isn't too complicated, something
Yes.
that's just easy listening podcasts. Definitely, that's a real winner, that one.
Yes, it really is.
But you were saying don't go down below.
Yeah.
That's the next thing, is
Yeah.
to stay up on deck as much as possible.
The reason being, when you're down below, you're not looking at the horizon. You're seeing seeing the inside of the boat, and everything looks straight. It looks straight. The brain thinks it's straight, but the brain's doing this because you're actually moving.
Well, especially if you're
Again.
trying to cook in the galley, because that was one time when I did feel a bit queasy, was on a delivery across the North Sea. We went straight into I don't know what it was, big force. And I was told to go down and prepare dinner for 6 people, and I
Yeah.
was wearing all my oilies. The galley was such that I had to stand sideways on to the boat.
Not great.
It wasn't great, and of course with all the oilies I was starting to get hot and sweaty, and I managed to cook the meal, but I immediately ran up and sat in the cockpit just to...
And talking about the galley, that brings me to odours. So very strong odours, like you mentioned lavender before, really strong smells. I mean, diesel's the obvious one. The one time I was sick, the only time I've ever been sick, the first time I went on a boat with you, having told you I'd never been sick on a boat ever in my life, and I was sick once, it was the first time. We were on a fishing boat.
Yes, the engine was always on, wasn't it? It was constantly running.
Yeah.
Big Atlantic swell. This was in the
Yeah.
Caribbean. We
Yeah.
went game fishing.
I went down below, so I got the smell of the engine. I went down below, had to go to the loo. Unlike all the other people who were men who could pee over the side, I had to go down below. And it was right down the bottom. It's noisy, and the diesel smell down there was horrific. We were really bucking, and I had to sit on this loo. And by the time I got back upstairs, so did my sandwich. It's the only time. Yeah, so the other thing, of course, so definitely be upstairs, be on deck, be in the cockpit, try and be on the helm. Because if you think about car sickness, it's never the driver that's sick, it's the passengers. So lots of reasons for that. You're looking at the horizon, you're looking where you're going, you're concentrating, you're working, you're standing up. That's something else they say. Standing up can be better for some people, don't know. But get people on the helm if they're feeling sick.
The classic one, a good skipper. A good skipper will always ask his crew if anyone feels seasick, and they'll stick them on the helm. Also, under practical solutions is, of course, food and drink.
Yeah. And when we've talked about ginger tea, but there's lots of other things to think about.
Yeah, and some of these surprised me actually, and I think with a lot of you out there, some of these solutions are going to work, some of them aren't. The big question is, should you eat?
Yeah.
So one argument says that you should at least line the stomach, so those acids have got something to work on if you are going to be sick. Other people will say that by having a full stomach, they're more likely to be sick, and in fact the medical profession suggests that you shouldn't have very large amounts of food, and especially not greasy food as well. So all you Brits out there, going for a brisk sail in the morning on egg and bacon breakfast is not necessarily a good idea. But I do think that for some people that does work.
Yeah, I think so too. But a lot of it is psychosomatic, as we're learning. They say that, yeah, really you should have some food, a little bit throughout the day. Just keep eating small amounts. And personally, from experience of vomiting for other things, I'd say have something in your stomach. So when you're sick, at least you've got something to come out. Plenty of water.
Yeah, water. Now, I love coffee. I can't function in the morning without coffee, but there was one occasion last month I did a night watch at 2 in the morning and I made a coffee and it was super strong and I hadn't eaten anything in it. It did make me feel a bit queasy. Yeah. So just be careful with things like coffee and of course a really strong tea as well.
Yeah,
it certainly gets me, you know, sort of hyped.
Yeah.
Drink alcohol. No, drink, alcohol, not drink alcohol, because that's a really bad one. Alcohol is a diuretic, so it makes you wee out those important fluids that your body needs.
It also makes you drunk, so it's not a really good idea to be on a boat and drunk.
I was really meaning actually sailing with a hangover.
Oh right, yeah.
Which, you know, let's be honest, we do occasionally.
We have, it has been known. Yeah, if you're prone to seasickness, don't drink the night before.
Another classic remedy is crackers and oatmeal biscuits.
Yeah.
I guess because they're dry and they soak up some of those acids, so you just nibble on them throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, we do that. On the Women Who Sail group, a couple of people said to me that you should avoid citrus fruits. And then a couple of people said you should eat oranges.
From a medical point of view, anything that's citrusy, like your ginger and lemon tea, is not good for you. But you know, if it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah, it works for me. See, I love my oranges and my apples, and we eat green apples a lot. And in fact, Elena from Sailing Kittiwake and a couple of others said eat green apples. So, you know, it's about what works for who, really. And then there was one other piece of advice from Women Who Sail. Make light meals ahead of time, so it's just grab and go. So you're not down below for too long, and that's Sandra Rennick of Sailing Vessel Second Wind.
If you know you're about to hit some bad weather, definitely prepare your meals beforehand, because there is nothing worse, as we've already alluded to, as being stuck in the galley, sweating over a hot stove in shitty weather. It's not nice. Yeah,
just fly down, grab it, bring it back up and eat it upstairs when it's really bad.
And we come on to our 5th way to combat seasickness. And as a little treat, we have a secret 6th one as well, which we'll come on to in a minute. But the 5th one is the magical way. Liz, I don't know what this one is. Tell me, what's so magic about this?
Well, apparently it works. And I found it on lots of sources, and I've been told it from people who say that it does work for them. And that is, you put one earplug in one ear. Some say it needs to be the opposite ear to the one you use to write with. So if you're right-handed, it goes in your left ear. And people swear by it.
Really?
Apparently. If all else fails, here is one brilliant piece of advice from the Women Who Sail Facebook group. When we have nervous crew or guests on board, they can talk themselves into being seasick. We tell them to eat lots of wine gums or gummy bears. When asked if this works, we say no, but it makes your puke more fun for us to see, as it looks like a lava lamp. So true.
Love it.
Never seen it, sounds good. So finally, Jamie, you said earlier that you have a 6th way that you haven't told me about. So
guaranteed.
Really?
Guaranteed. This works for everyone.
Really?
Yeah. Sit under a shady palm tree. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, hope you found those useful. I am sure lots of you have your own ways of combating seasickness. I bet there's a few of you that will say, I have never been seasick.
Yeah.
But be honest with yourselves, there are occasions when you feel just a little bit off, and that's the beginning of seasickness.
Yeah, so, you know, try some of these ideas. Some of them are conflicting. There's so much information out there, but this is just a whole load that we've found and we've discussed and we've read over the years. So try them. Please
leave your comments below. Don't forget to like the video, share it, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. In the meantime, peace
and fair winds. Look at this, so you'll look at it, and you can bollocks.
Were you looking at me? The fact is, and that can sometimes.
I don't know where that came from. Did you know what it was?
Yeah.
What?
Practical
No,
way.
that's the fourth way. You know, listen to anything I say. You didn't hear me read out the 5. It's number 4.
It's number 2.
No, it's now number 4.
What am I saying?
You were talking about crackers
I
later.
know, but what am I saying? The thing is, when you're doing this and banging that.
Should we talk for half an hour about that, or should we do this all
Yeah.
again?